Please remember there are additional resources and things such as code samples at elithecomputerguy.com. So if you're watching one of these classes and you need to know what code looks like, or if you need links to the resources that we're using, please go to elithecomputerguy.com and take a look at our class posting there. Also, please remember that free to the end user classes are not actually free. It costs me a lot of money to be able to provide this type of content. So if you could click on the donate button and throw in a couple of dollars every month, this will help me be able to continue to provide you this type of material. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, and in today's class, we are going to be discussing regex, or regular expressions in Python. Oh no, we're gonna be talking about regex. This class is gonna be horrible. Is not what this class is going to be. RegEx is actually pretty darn simple, but for some reason, don't ask me why, almost every coder I know hates regex. It kind of reminds me of subnet masking in the sysadmin world. So if you've dealt with TCP/IP4 addresses, you'll know about subnet masks, and sometimes you'll be given a class C subnet mask, and for some reason you need to divide that down into multiple different subnets for whatever your infrastructure requires. And basically, if you ever deal with sysadmins, it's just a day that they hate. But I don't really know why. Like, I've literally taught subnetting countless times at this point. It's actually pretty simple, but every time I think about subnetting, it kind of just makes my brain melt. I mean, it's just octets. It's wherever the ones in the octet ends, that's the network. Everything else is the address. I don't know why. Every time, though, I try to do the subnetting, it just kind of makes my brain melt, even though it's relatively simple. The same thing is true with regex. It's like you sit there, you're like, oh, no, I'm going to have to do regex. And then you sit down and you do regex, and it's actually kind of simple. For some reason, it's just something that the human brain has a difficult problem dealing with, trying to figure out. And so again, it's one of those things in the technology world where you really don't have to be smart in order to do many things. You just actually have to do it. You have to believe that you can do it. You have to be dumb enough to believe that this isn't that hard. And then it won't be that hard, and then you'll be successful, and then that's how the dumb people get ahead. It is, sad but true. I think about this when we talk about regular expressions. I was literally discussing this with a buddy of mine who's a full-time coder. I said I was doing a class on regex, and he was like, yeah, Eli, well, how do you define regex? And I asked him, I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, my wife the other day asked me, what regex was, and I kind of just got tongue-tied trying to explain it to her. How do you explain regex? And I looked at him and I was like, well, it's, pattern matching. Basically, you use regex to find specific patterns, IP addresses, social security numbers, telephone numbers, email addresses, that type of thing. And then with the regex module, you're able to pull that out and then do something with it, right? Basically, regex is pattern matching. But then this guy's he's a real coder. This is what he does, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. So I'm like, I'm not a computer science graduate. What's your definition of regex? And he was like, well, I was explaining to her it's a domain-specific language for being able to find pattern matching within files. And I was like, that seems like a pretty complicated explanation. And then he looked at me and was like, yeah, so you just say pattern matching. Yeah, that's probably a lot easier, right? But again, it's one of those things with so many things in the technology world, is so many times we overthink what we're doing. Things become complicated because we think they should be complicated or whatever else. So anyways, when we talk about regex and we talk about regular expressions in basically any programming language, but we're going to be dealing with this in Python, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be doing pattern matching. We are looking for specific patterns in order to do something with it, right? So you can use regex if you're asking for people to create new passwords, right? If you want a password to have a certain level of complexity, you can run it through a regex statement to say, basically, does this password have this level of complexity? Is it so many digits long, at least so many digits long? Does it have uppercase? Does it have lowercase? That's something that you can use regex for. We're going to have a demonstration where I'm going to show you if you just need to pull out very specific information from a command line command. So we did the OS module before. So with the OS module, you can send commands directly to the underlying operating system, be able to get back the results, right? But when you get back the results, you get back the whole results. Well, what if you just want specific information? So the demonstration we're going to do at the end of the class is just being able to pull out the IP address. So if we just want to pull out the IP address, we can do a regex statement to just say this is the pattern we're looking for an IP address, pull out anything that matches that pattern, and we can pull it out. Imagine if we're searching through documents and we want to scrape for things like email addresses. Let's say you just got a job as a marketing person because you've decided you have no soul. And you want to just, destroy the world, right? Well, one of the things that you can do with regex statements is you can scan through documents and look for email addresses, pull out all the email addresses that you find in those documents, and then dump it into a database so that you can spam the hell out of everybody that you know, right? And basically, that's what regex is. All we're going to be able to do, or all we're doing, is we're looking for patterns. We're then able to pull out the values that match those patterns, and then we can do something with that depending on what we designed for. And so that is what we're going to be doing today in this class on regex. Now, this is an example we're going to get to in a couple of lessons, but these are 3 different patterns that you can use for regex, and these patterns allow you to pull out IP addresses, right? So if you're looking for a TCP IP address, 10.1.10.25, 192.168.1.54, whatever the IP address is, basically these are 3 different patterns that will match for the IP addresses. And you'll see that there's brackets here, there's square brackets, and there's squiggly brackets, and there's escapes, and there's this R thing. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Well, again, do remember in the computer world, all of this stuff actually does mean something. But one of the questions you may have is, well, how do I figure out what this stuff means? The best thing that you can do is, as I keep telling you, is you go to W3 School. So you go to w3schools.com under Python, and they have this whole page for Python and regex. And if you scroll down, it'll give you some examples. But beyond that, one of the things that it'll do is it'll give you all of the sequences and the arguments. So if you do slash uppercase A, returns a match if the specified characters are at the beginning of the string. D, slash D, returns a match where the string contains digits, so numbers between 0 to 9. If we come down here, we have sets. So if we want letters between A through N or A through Z, this is how you do a set. You do pluses. There's all kinds of different basically arguments that you can put in here. And so that's really what you're going to be doing. When you're going to be going out there and you're going to be creating your own regex expressions, all you do is you do a little bit of research with these, you figure out exactly what you're looking for, and then you slowly plot along and actually write out what the regex expression should be. Now, this is one of the places that I will tell you ChatGPT is absolutely awesome. So anybody who actually follows me when I'm honest about things. So when I do these classes, I'm very professional, and I try to smile, and I try to be happy about everything, right? And so everything's great and everything's wonderful here. We should all be happy little computer geeks. It might come as a surprise. That's not always how I feel about the tech industry. Anyways, I do other videos and I do other content where I'm a little bit more realistic about the tech industry in general. And one of the things I talk about with ChatGPT is I'm actually shockingly unimpressed with it. Like, it's cool. It's cool for what it is, but it's not going to destroy the world and do all this stuff that people say that it will. But one of the things I've talked about for a long time is one of the things that I like ChatGPT for is regex. Very sophisticated regex. So especially if you're using the API API, one of the great things that you can do is you can dump an entire document into the ChatGPT API, and then you can literally ask it, I need the person's first name, the last name, the phone number, the social security, their address, and basically ChatGPT will give you back all of that information lickety split. So I use it for PDF files. So there are modules in Python that can turn PDF files into pure text, right? So it'll just turn it into a text file, which seems good, but people don't realize that PDF files not only are text, but they're actually also graphical, right? Where information is in the form, how the blocks are designed. You don't think about PDF files being kind of a graphical document, but it actually is, even simple, even 1099 forms, government forms. Actually, there's graphics stuff in there. So one of the problems is that when you pull out all of the text that has people's names and phone numbers and social security and the rest of it, the format you get in Python, like the text is there, but again, that's a whole question, like how do you parse it? How do you get the information that you want? How do you code to get the information that you want? One of the nice things with the ChatGPT API is you can just give it the text from the PDF file, and you can say, this is the information that I need, and it will just return it to you. And you don't have to worry about doing all the coding and everything else. But beyond that, one of the nice things with ChatGPT, especially when you're doing something like RegEx, is you can simply come to ChatGPT and you can ask it for things like the expressions that you should use. So if I come down here, right? So let me do a little plus here. So message for ChatGPT, Python RegEx statement / email address. So I can just hit enter here, and it's going to go, and hopefully it'll work since I'm doing this video. Load failed. What? Okay, certainly you can use Python. So anyways, one of the cool things is you can come here, and it will actually give you, so is valid email address. Here is a pattern. And so this is one of the things that I talk to a lot of the students about when you use AI is very good to be able to give you an answer. You just then have to be able to audit that answer to verify it's giving you what you want. And so here's the pattern that is giving you. We're going to explain a lot of this as we go. Basically, it's going to start with lowercase a through z or uppercase a through z or 0 through 9 or period underscore percentage sign plus or minus plus. So basically any number of any of these digits with an at, any number of those digits again with a period. And then a through z, minimum of 2 up to however many at the end. So basically, if I'm looking for an email address, this would be eli@gmail.com. And I can just copy and paste that. Again, I would rather audit the code that AI created for me lickety split than necessarily have to go through and handpick this out on my own. So that's one thing, like with RegEx, and in all seriousness, since ChatGPT is free at this point in time, if you're doing RegEx and you can't figure out what you're doing wrong, what you're screwing up, just come to ChatGPT, say, I need a RegEx statement for whatever it is that you're looking for. It will most likely, if it does not give you a perfect answer, it will at least give you a baseline. So with that, let's dive in and start playing with a bit of RegEx. So RegEx should be part of the default library that comes with your Python installation. If for some reason it's not, I don't know, do a Google search or go to ChatGPT to ask how to install it. But what we're going to need to do first is we're going to need to import the RegEx module. And so the RegEx module is simply going to be called RE. So import RE. We've imported the RegEx model. From there, we are going to create a message. So now with this, right, this is a string. So this could be coming in from a file, file read. This could be coming in from a request. You could be going out and scanning web pages, something like that. We're just going to be using a basic string to make this easier. And so we're going to have a message. So basically a string of Bob says bam in a barn as a bat barks at a bub. What does that mean? It doesn't really matter. It's just something that we can try to go through and parse. We're then going to print the message up on the screen so that I can reference to it relatively easy as we go through these different patterns. So in order to do regex, we're going to use the find all function. And so what the find all function is going to do is it's going to find all instances of the pattern that we're asking for, and it's going to put that into a list. So we're going to get a list of all instances. So again, IP addresses, email addresses, telephone numbers, those types of things, you can scan through a document or a web page or whatever else and be able to grab all of that information. It's then in a list. You can then do a for x loop to iterate through the list and dump it into a database or whatever else. We're simply going to print out the results here. So you could do something equals re.findAll. That would create a variable that equals this list value, but we're just simply going to print it out just because we've got a lot of stuff on the screen. When you do this, so re.findAll, and then what you're going to do is you're going to give it the pattern, so the pattern that you're looking for, and then the string that you're going to look in, right? So basically the pattern here, so pattern equals, we're going to say R first. So a lot of times we use F strings. So F strings is how we can concatenate information. What R does is it turns it into a raw string. So with this, we don't need quite so many escapes. So what escapes are, again, they're slashes. But they're the backslash here, and sometimes you have to backslash out, so you have to escape out of a character to actually be able to use it in something like a regular expression. So by using R for a raw text, it means you'll have to use fewer escapes. It's just easier. Just put R in there. So anyways, then we're going to have the pattern. We're going to open with a single quotation mark, close with a single quotation mark. So with this, what we're going to be looking for is it's going to start with B, then period is any one character. It's a wild card, any one character, and then B. So B, any one character, B. And so we look up here, we have Bob, and we have Bub. Not Bat, because that's not a B. And Bam is four letters, so that's not right. So when we print this out, we should get a list that says Bob and Bub. When I print this out, we then can come down here and we see Bob and Bub, Bob and Bub. So we got those two characters out of it. Then we're going to go, let me just comment that out and uncomment this. So basically what this is, again, raw string B dot star B. So basically what this is one character of anything, and then any number of other characters, and it should end with B. So when we do this, what we're going to see is, so B dot star means it starts at B, period, for one character, then any number of other characters, and it ends with B. So basically what happens here, if we do B dot star B, starts with a B, ends with a B, so then we're actually going to grab all of that as a single value in that index of the list, which is probably not what you're looking for, because it starts with a B, any number of things in the middle, and it ends with a B. So that's where you then go to here, and what we have here is, this is called being greedy, right? So basically it's going to try to get as many words as possible. So we're going to do B dot star question mark. So every time it sees a B, it's going to try to end the word and grab that as a list. So it starts with a B, and then when the next time it sees a B, that will be an item in the list. Then it'll do it again, then it'll do it again, then it'll do it again. If I go through here and then I run this, we now see, right? So B dot star question mark B, this will now give us Bob. So it starts with a B, any number of characters ends with a B. Bam starts with a B, any number of characters ends with a B. Barn as a B, it just gets to the B, so barn as a B, it just gets that. And then barks at a bub, but we get barks at a B, right? So basically it starts with a B and ends with the next B that it sees, even if that B is in the middle of a word. And so that can be a bit of a problem, right? So then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to this pattern, And what this pattern is going to do is it's going to make sure that we get the entire word. Basically, if you end at something like a B, that we get the rest of the word. And so what we do is a backslash B. So basically this is for a block. And so this will get the beginning B, and then when it sees the final B, it will then keep getting letters until the word ends. So we do this now. We get Bob, Bam, barn as a bat barks at Bub. So it gets the B and it gets all the way to the B. And so now that is an entire block in there, right? And so that's some of the stuff that you can do with this pattern matching. If we go down here, we can then, what this then does here is, so we're going to do B. So raw string starts with a B. So with these square brackets, what these square brackets mean is anything that we put in here. So uppercase A to uppercase Z. So it's uppercase A to uppercase Z, we want that. Lowercase a to lowercase z, we want that. We don't want any other characters. Plus means any number of whatever characters are in here, and then we end with a B. If we then run this, we then get Bob. So Bob starts with a B, has O, so that's between A to Z, and then ends with a B. So we get Bob. Bam starts with a B, has AM, so that's in here, any number of characters, and ends with a B. And Bub, again, starts with a B, U, ends with a B, and so we get those results. And so basically, this is what we're looking at with a pattern matching, and this is also one of the reasons that RegEx can get frustrating, is trying to figure out exactly what you're trying to pull out of this string and make sure that the pattern that you create actually gives you what it is that you're looking for. And that's why, again, going to things like ChatGPT or going to W3 Schools can be so useful to try to give you at least the beginnings of the pattern so that you understand what you're trying to accomplish. Now that you have a basic idea of what these RegEx expressions look like, let's go and try to create a RegEx expression for being able to get email addresses, right? So in this particular example, we have a very, very ugly list of information that would simulate what you might have sitting around somewhere in your infrastructure. As I've talked about before, when you're dealing with databases, when you're dealing with data, garbage in, disaster out, right? If you put garbage data into your database, all hell can break loose relatively quickly. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to try to clean up that data before it goes into the database. So let's say we have this data store somewhere. Maybe this is something like a Google Doc where you've been asking for people's email addresses or something like that, and people have been plugging in their information and they've been doing whatever the hell it is that users actually do, right? Basically a simple example. So we have bob1@bob.com. We have just the name Frank. We have Todd at AOL.com. We have Sue, and then we have Phil at Gmail. So let's say we're creating a system to go through and scrape all of the email addresses that we have in our data stores, and then we want to dump that into our database. Well, we don't want to dump Frank into our database. We don't want to dump Sue into our database. We don't want to dump Phil at Gmail into our database because that will cause problems. Again, one of the things to be thinking about, especially in the service-oriented architecture world, is if you send bad data to an API, you may get dinged for that, right? So if you're using something like SendGrid and you send garbage values as things like email addresses, you might actually get penalized for doing that. So if you try to send an email literally to Frank or to Phil at Gmail, you might get on their bad side. So one of the things you want to do is you want to go try to clean up that information so that everything's good. So with this, basically what we're going to do is we're just going to try to grab the email addresses. So result is going to equal re.findAll. And here's a very basic expression. This is probably not good enough for you, but I do want to just kind of explain how this works, right? So RE find all, and then we do R. So this is for raw string, so we don't have to put in additional escapes. Then we're going to do the square brackets, right? Square bracket. So when you do the square bracket, basically anything within the square bracket is good. And you can do ranges. So uppercase A to uppercase Z means I can put in A through Z uppercase, and that will be considered good. Lowercase a through lowercase z means you can put lowercase a through lowercase z, any character, and that would be good. And then we do numbers. So 0 through 9, obviously, that would be good. You'll notice I didn't put any special characters in here, exclamation points or anything like that, so that would not be considered good. So it's just A through Z, 0 through 9. We then do plus. And what plus isn't actually additive to add. It looks like that, but it's not. What plus means is any number of these. So you got a really long name, and again, if it's 100 characters, that's fine as long as it's this. But you will notice there's no periods here. If I had Bob, period, Steve Smith or something, that wouldn't work. But anyway, so plus is any number of these. Then we're going to have at, so that's the actual at symbol. So any number of characters, at, and then we're going to do any number of characters, A through Z. We don't have the numbers here, so this is for the domain name. Then we're going to do plus. We are going to have to do one escape for period, so this is for period. So again, Gmail, AOL, whatever, period. And then we're going to do A through Z plus, so basically any number of characters here. So this is going to be like bob1 at AOL.com or .television or whatever else. Then we're going to print this out here. Now feed it the message. So out of this list, bob1 and Todd at AOL.com are the only actual viable email addresses. So we get bob1 at bob.com and we get Todd at AOL.com. But one of the things you'll notice here is, again, I did not put a period, right? Within this, I did not put a period. So if I rerun this script, Todd will not show up. We get this weird Smith at AOL.com because period isn't in here. If I do period 2, and then I hit run, we now see todd.smith at AOL.com. That actually gives us what it is that we're looking for. And so this kind of shows you how those ranges work. The plus is any number of these at so on and so forth. And so as you want to make this more and more sophisticated, you would then add more and more commands into here to make it more precise for what you're trying to accomplish. Now, one of the things that I keep trying to explain to you folks in the technology world, and especially in the coding world, is that there's a dozen ways to skin a cat, right? Anything that you're trying to accomplish, there are a lot of different ways to do that, and they all are technically correct. But again, whether you understand what's going on or whether the next person that's going to be maintaining your project once you leave understands what's going on, that can be the confusing bit. So with here, we have 3 different patterns that allow us to pull IP addresses out of a string. So we have IP underscore message, and we just have the IP address is 192.168.1.1 and 10.1.10.1. So imagine we have this string and we simply want to be able to pull out the IP addresses that are in the string. These are 3 different patterns that allow us to do that. So in this first pattern here, this is probably going to be the easiest pattern to read, and so may or may not be the way that you want to do it. Again, one of the things you have to be thinking about when you're coding is do you want to make it as efficient as possible or as readable as possible? That's a decision. That's a decision, something that you're going to have to think about. So basically with this, for the pattern, we're going to have the raw string, open single quotation mark, close single quotation mark at the end. So we're going to have a range 0 through 9, right? So 192, right? So it's going to be anywhere from 0 to 9. We want that. That's going to be within the square bracket. And then we're going to have the squiggly bracket. And what the squiggly bracket does is it says how many of these characters do we want. So we open the squiggly bracket, we start with the beginning of the range, comma, end of the range. So when you're dealing with an IP address, you may have 1 digit, or you may have 2 digits, or you may have 3 digits. So the beginning of the range is 1 digit, the end of the range is 3 digits, right? So you can have 1, you can have 2 digits, or you can have 3 digits. So this can either be 1 or 10 or 192, right? Then we're going to escape out of a period. So this is going to be the first octet, period. Then we're going to have the second octet, period. The third octet, period. And then the fourth octet, no period, because that's the end of the IP address. And so basically when you run that, you're going to get a list with 192.168.1.1 and 10.1.10.1. So that gives you both IP addresses, and that's relatively easy to read. Most people should be able to understand that just by looking at it. Then we come here down here to the next way that we can do the pattern. So with this, we do /D. So with /D, what this means is that it's a digit between 0 to 9, right? So if we go over and we take a look at W3 schools, the RegEx, like we did before, we can scroll down, right? It gives us all these things. And if we look at the /d, returns a match where the string contains digits, numbers from 0 to 9. So instead of doing a range of 0 to 9, we can just do /d, right? So again, raw string /d, 1 to 3 characters, /period /d, 1 to 3 characters, period /d, 1 to 3 characters, period /d, 1 to 3 characters. So this right here means exactly what this means here. It's just slightly more efficient, right? Then we come down to here, and this is where we make it even more complex. So basically with this, we're going to create a block, and then we're going to create this statement. So what this statement is going to do is it's basically going to replicate the first 3, right? The first 3 is D, 1 through 3, period. And then we're going to do that 3 times. So we're going to do this 3 times. And then we're going to do the final one without the period at the end. And that will give us the IP addresses. So either any of these 3 different patterns will give us the exact same result down here. You're just going to have to decide as you're writing these regex patterns what makes the most sense for your particular environment. So the main thing that you're probably going to be using regex for is that find all function. So the find all will find everything that matches the pattern, dump that into a list, and then you can iterate that list for whatever it is that you want to do. Something else that you can do with the regex though is you can actually do a search function. So with a pattern that you can create, you can search a string to see if that pattern is within that string and then do something if it is. So imagine you want to be a hacker, right? Because everybody wants to be a hacker nowadays. Why build when you can destroy? Anyways, everybody wants to be a hacker, and so one of the big things with being a hacker is that many times, basically credentials are stored in plain text documents, right? Again, I've seen this in the real world where system administrators, they'll literally type out usernames and passwords and dump them into text files, dump them into README files or whatever else, because they're thinking for some reason that's a secure place to store information. So anyways, imagine if you could go through and basically you could scan through all of these files and you could look for anything that kind of looks like password. Again, one of the things you're going to think about is what pattern are you looking for? Again, remember, computers don't auto-magically do anything. They don't magically do things. You have to code everything out. But basically, you can create a regex statement that basically should find anything that might look like, let's say, password, and then we're going to print this out on the screen. But again, you could dump this into a database, right? So imagine you have a document. In that document, it says something about password. So my password is 123456, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do an if-else statement here, and we're going to use a search function. So if regex re.search, and basically the first thing that we plug in is the pattern that we're looking for. So it's going to start with PAS. We're going to do the brackets for a range of A through Z, plus for any number that's within that A through Z, and then we're going to end with RD, right? Basically, so again, if somebody misspells password, it should still pop up. We're going to feed it the message. We're going to feed it the string. If this pattern is in the string, we're going to print that. So we can say, look, we found the password. Else, we're just simply going to print out on the screen, no password, right? So my password is 123456. We run this, and we can see my password is 123456. But what if somebody misspells? Right? So somebody can be sloppy in multiple ways. One, they can be sloppy in security, and two, they can be sloppy while they're typing. So what if they put password? Password, right? It's not password, it's password, right? But since we're doing this pattern matching here, if we do this, you'll still find my password is 123456 because password still matches this particular pattern. Again, with this, I can do password like that, right? If somebody got spelled that for some reason, and we go through, again, password still matches this particular pattern. So we were able to actually see that. And then based off of that, we can do something, again, dump it into a database or whatever else. And so this is one of the things that can be useful too, is again, sometimes with documents, people will reference things. Like again, with an IP address, with an email address, it's very easy to go in and pull out the information. But again, things like passwords. You don't know how long the password is going to be, how short the password is going to be. You don't know what the pattern of the password is going to look like. So sometimes simply looking for something else. You might do, for patterns, you might do credentials. You might do logon. You might do username, password, right? You look for all of those different things and you create patterns that basically will catch, people's typos and those types of things and look for that type of information. So then you can then correlate it to whatever their username or their password is to be able to pull that information out. So that's all the search is. So all the search does, it allows you to use an if-else statement to say, is this pattern in the string? If it is, do X. If not, do Y. So now let's do a lab that might simulate something that you're actually going to use in the real world. So let's say you want the IP address of some domain name that you're interacting with. So maybe CNN.com or Fox.com, or if you're using a software as a service, maybe Salesforce, or again, something like Twilio. Let's say for some reason that you want the IP address. And so what this lab is going to do is it's going to pull out that IP address for you so that you can do with it whatever it is that you need to do. So with this, basically we're going to import OS. So we're going to use the OS module so that we can send a command directly to the operating system and then get back the results. Then we're also going to import RE for regex so that we can then go through and parse those results. Site is going to equal whatever you want the site to be. So we're going to have CNN.com here. Command is going to equal fstring ping space -c1. So remember, in the Linux world or the Mac world, if you run the ping command, it keeps going until you escape. So especially in something like Python, if you don't have any escape, it'll just keep going forever. So therefore, you'll never get the result back. By doing -c1, it will ping once and then give you the result back. And then we're feeding in the site value. Response is going to equal OS module, the popen function, command, so the command that we're feeding it, and then we're going to read the command. So if we just do the popen, we'll just get an object back. That's not useful for us. We actually need to read the text out of the object. So that's why we put the .read at the end. And here we're going to print out the response. So don't worry about this for a second. We're going to print out the whole response. So we're going to ping CNN.com. We're going to get the response back, and this is what we get, right? Ping CNN.com, 151.101, 131.5. blase, 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 all of this information. But this is a lot of additional information that we don't necessarily want. Again, if we're going to be dumping this into a database or a data store, we're going to be printing this to a report. We only want specific information. So for this, let's say we only want the IP address. We don't want everything else here. So that's where we go down here and we create our little IP address pattern. So pattern equals, we're just using the simple pattern that I showed you before, raw string 0 through 9, 1 to 3 characters, period. 0 through 9, 1 to 3 characters, period. 0 through 9, 1 to 3 characters, period. 0 through 9, whoops, 0, messed that one up. 1 to 3 characters there. And so again, 192.168.1.1 or whatever else, that's what we'll get. IP result equals re.findAll, that pattern, and the response. So we're feeding in the response we're getting back from the OS module, and we're looking for this particular pattern. Then what we're going to do is we're going to print f string, the site. So the site we're trying to ping, IP address is IP_result0. So again, remember we're doing a list. So we get a list back. So at the 0 index, that's the first item in the list. Since I know what the ping looks like, I know the only IP address that I'm going to be getting back is the one that I want. So I'm just going to get that first 0 item. I'm then going to run this. And we can now see CNN.com IP address is 151.101.195.5. So again, I could dump that into a database or something. If I go up here and let's say I do fox.com and then I run this, we can see fox.com IP address is 23.41.168.176, right? And I could just feed stuff in here all day. tacobell.com. We're going to do the ping. tacobell.com is 127.0.0.1. Oh, wow. I think I screwed with my host file a long time ago. Long time ago, I screwed with my hosts file. That's a bad thing. If you don't know what a host file is, don't worry about it. But anyways, let me just go up here and we'll just go back to, let's say, msnbc.com. We'll run that. And msnbc.com is 184.25.177.238, right? And so basically, this is a simple way to show you what I'm doing is I'm interacting with the operating system. I'm getting a response back from that operating system tool. Once I get that back, I'm then matching within that response whatever pattern it is that I'm looking for, and then I'm doing something with the value that I got back from matching the pattern. And this basically gives you an idea of what RegEx is and why it's powerful. Again, if you do not fully understand all of this stuff here, it really isn't a big deal. Again, with ChatGPT and with W3 Schools, you can basically use their information to go through and slowly be able to figure out how to write these statements. Yay! Now you know how to do regex, regular expressions in Python. And see, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. And at the exact same time, it's pretty simple. Again, it's kind of like subnet masking where you're like, I don't want to do it. Does it look hard? No. Do you think you can do it? Yes. Are you going to do it? No. Why? I don't know. Again, it's a very interesting thing in the technology world. There are certain subjects in the technology world where, although they honestly are relatively simple, everybody hates them. Why? Who the hell knows? It is just reality. RegEx is the same way. Again, one of the big things to be thinking about with RegEx, though, is again, just like subnet masking, once you figure out the expression that you're looking for, basically you can copy and paste that from now to the end of time. You figure out the pattern that works for you as far as email addresses go, and you just keep using that pattern. Again, IP addresses, MAC addresses, whatever it is that you're doing doing for your particular projects, there's probably a few different patterns that you just got to figure out what those patterns look like. You throw them in a notepad somewhere, and then you just copy and paste them, going forward. One of the big things to be thinking about, though, again, when you use ChatGPT in order to create things like these expressions, is you do need to know enough to be able to audit what the AI gives you and verify it's giving you what it is that you're actually looking for, right? Because sometimes, again, with these expressions, when you're doing those ranges, if you don't add certain characters, then that won't work, right? I think about this way back when, probably about 20 years ago. So I had a website or a domain name way back when that had a .info extension, right? Or domain, whatever suffix. And the thing was, if you go back to about 2000, right, these new domains were coming out, and we all thought they would be the next big thing, right? So we had .biz and .info, all of them came out. And here's the thing, nobody cared. 20 years later, what we realized is you have .com or nothing, not .co, not any of that horse crap. You're either .com or you're garbage. We didn't know that back then. Well, one of the weird things is back then, all the suffixes were three digits generally, right? Com, biz, org, edu, mil. They all had three characters. Well, I had a .info domain name. So I had my email address with this .info domain name, and I would go to create user accounts on certain platforms, and many times they would fail me because I did not have a real email address, right? Since it was 4 characters instead of 3, it would see 4 and say no, right? It would do its little regex. No, I'm looking for 3 and only 3. And then I wasn't able to create accounts on many different platforms because I literally had .info at the end of my email address. This is one of those things that you need to be thinking about. And again, as a technology professional, it is not simply about deploying code and then walking away from it and never thinking about it again, right? If you're deploying these regex statements, whether you're scraping documents for information, or whether you're using, again, for form validation or something else, you do have to keep up to date with what the current standards are, what people are using, and verifying that your statements, your expressions, still do what it is that you think they should do, to make sure that you're not booting out 1% of your users or whatever else because whatever their email address or something like that doesn't fit into that regex statement. It's one of those things to kind of think about. But that's really all there is as far as regex goes. Now, one of the things, again, when you're parsing documents, is there are a lot of Python modules out there, again, we'll go over later, that might be able to parse documents better for you. So there's something called Beautiful Soup. So if you're trying to scrape web pages and you're trying to pull specific information out of web pages, most likely Beautiful Soup will be a much easier way to go, right? You can use regex. You can use regex to pull out specific information from web pages, and you can sit there and you can fat finger your way through creating that expression. Or you can use Beautiful Soup, where you can simply say, I want all the email addresses, or I want all the p tags, or I want all the hrefs, and then it will just give it to you. And so that's one of the things to also be thinking about. Like, again, when you go through and you're parsing information, is again thinking about the most appropriate way to do it from a security standpoint, from a maintainability standpoint, right? From an institutional knowledge standpoint. Just because you can do regex statements really good doesn't mean everybody else on your team can. That's one of the big problems that we can run into in the technology world, is we can have team members that truly, they are absolutely brilliant at what they do. And for some reason, regex doesn't faze them, right? They saw regex and they were the 1% of the population. They're like, yeah, that's easy, whatever, right? Here's one of the problems you can run into. If you get really, really sophisticated with your regex expressions, but nobody else on your team can do regex the way that you do, and then you leave, because that's always what's going to happen, right? At some point, you are going to leave. If they are not able to maintain the code that you've written once you've left, you have failed. That is a failure. right? It's not simply that you can write the code, it's that you write code that can be maintained by the team when you leave. And so that's one of the things when you're thinking about like parsing documents, whether you use pure regex statements or whether you use a module such as Beautiful Soup, which is a hell of a lot easier to use, right? In some instances, it might actually make a lot more sense to use that easier module than proving to the world how smart you are with the regex statements that you can create. Again, this is kind of some of the stuff that you need to be thinking about, again, when you write the code and when you go out there as a real professional. So anyways, I hope you understand regex. Again, regex is one of those, just do it. Like it's literally, I keep telling you folks, you need to create projects and you just need to work, 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 work. Regex is the perfect example of this isn't something that you just want to study. Again, you can go to W3 schools and you can read through everything and you can study it. Studying it doesn't really sink it into your head. What you really need to do is you need to grab some text documents and then you need to create some regex patterns and then you need to go through and basically between W3 schools and ChatGPT in this class, figure out how to write these expressions so that you can pull out the exact information that you're looking for. The more you do this, the easier it'll get. The more you study, yeah, not necessarily so. So anyways, as always, I enjoy teaching this class and I look forward to seeing the next one.